Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Engage for Success radio show number 633, where we've got an accomplished leadership strategist explaining why curiosity is a superpower for growth. So today we're talking about curiosity and why that drives connection, creativity and business performance. I'm Jo Dodds, your host for today. I'm an engagement consultant working within the Engage for Success core team. The Engage for Success movement is an inclusive movement committed to the idea that there is a better way to work by releasing more of the capability and potential of people at work. We spread the word about employee engagement and shine a light on good practice, inspiring people and workplaces to thrive, and we're widely supported across the UK, involving the public, private and third sectors. If you go to our website, which is engageforsuccess.org, you can use the link at the bottom of the page to join our newsletter list, and all our social media links are there too. My guest today is Debra Clary, who's a leadership strategist, TEDx speaker and founder of the Clary Group. Welcome, Debra. Great to have you with me.
Thank you so much, Jo.
Lovely. So start by telling us a bit more about you and about what you do and maybe about TEDx and so on.
Yeah, so I actually spent the majority of my career of 3 decades in corporate America, from Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, and then my last stint was at Humana, a health and well-being company. And most of my work, I actually started right out of business school as a route driver for Frito-Lay. So that meant I was driving a truck delivering potato chips. And my parents were so proud, like, wait, you went 6 years to school and you're a Teamster. But I really learned how to manage a business from the back of that truck. It was really my classroom. And I spent 10 years at Frito-Lay in various sales, operating, and marketing roles, and then joined the Coca-Cola company, where I spent another decade in marketing, and then moved up to Jack Daniels, the hard stuff, where I was the VP of strategy. So at that point, I got really interested in human behavior and what made leaders great and perhaps those that could do better. And so I went back for my doctorate in leader development in org design. And when I finished that program, I moved into Humana and I ran their Leadership Institute. And again, since that time, I've just been wildly interested in human behavior and how we improve performance.
Lovely. And as you say, sort of rooted in the fact that you've sort of been there, seen it, done it, worked with those people as well. So you've got both sides of that sort of story, I guess.
Yes, yeah. So I have definitely the practical side of that, having worked literally from the ground up, and then coupled that with theory. And so it's been a really nice, just a nice combination to be able to support leaders.
So we said we're going to be talking today about why curiosity, I nearly couldn't say it then, is a superpower for growth. Let's perhaps start just by talking about how you'd sort of define curiosity, particularly in the sort of work environment.
Yeah, so, I look at curiosity as a system, right? So curiosity is a state and not a trait. Curiosity can be learned and curiosity is contagious. And so having had those experiences in corporations, very large, complex corporations, I come at it from the lens of how can we make the system better by asking different questions. So curiosity is about being genuinely interested in self and others, and really understanding where people are coming from so that we can get to better solutions.
And you said that it's learnable and teachable.
Yes, it is. There was actually a group of neuroscience out of London that were studying the brain development of toddlers. And so they observed the mother and the toddler interacting. And in 10 years, they did a longitudinal study. They went back to those same students. And what they found out, something that was pretty profound. One is, if the mother had the ability to stay with their child, who asked 289 questions a day, and if you've ever had a toddler, you know what I'm talking about, and if they could at least stay with them or encourage them to ask more questions. So after this 10-year period, they went back and looked at the control group and then those that were outside of that distribution, if you will. And what they learned was 3 significant things. One is those children were more intellectually advanced, more socially connected, and more emotionally stable than those that didn't have mothers that helped with their curiosity. So that was interesting study in itself. But then from that study, they went and determined that, well, curiosity is not a trait, it's a state. So if the mother had the ability to create this environment where the child felt safe to ask questions and to challenge things, it significantly changed the way that their trajectory in their primary school years, if you will.
Yeah.
And so the sense of, that's where I began to get this idea, could it be true in organizations? If it's true for children, could it be true in adults? But now you have to kind of back it up. So if children are asking 298 questions a day, and as adults we ask about 5, what has happened from the age of 5 to like 30? And if you think about it, children are taught to be incurious. Right, curiosity killed the cat. Don't open Pandora's box. Stay in your seat, raise your hand. And there's a lot of reasons we want children to stay in their seat and raise their hand, but perhaps we've indexed too far and we've taught people to be incurious. And then you go to the university and you become an expert, and then you come out into the workplace and you're rewarded for that expertise. And also, by the way, you have time constraints. And so curiosity is just something that's no longer a part of our everyday thinking, if you will. So we start curious, we become incurious. We know that it can be learned from these neuroscience studies. And so the work that we did is we commissioned a primary study to actually look at a leader's level of curiosity and the relatedness to performance and curiosity. And guess what, Joe? There's a direct correlation. So if your leader has a high level of curiosity, all curiosity rises within the organization. And then we couple that with a study that says that leaders and teams that are highly curious have greater performance. And I mean, why else do we go to work than to have better performance and to continue to make a better contribution?
Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? How do we encourage people in organizations to be curious, and where does it start?
Yeah. So, like everything in an organization, it begins and ends at the top. So goes the leader, so goes the organization. And so, the first thing I do when I'm working with CEOs and their teams is first I show them the data that, curiosity is not a luxury. It's not a nice to have. I'm teaching this because I know it drives performance based on the data. So once I get them to understand that this really has meat to it, there is science behind it, then they say, how do we do it? And I remind them that everything begins and ends at the top of the house. And so the opportunity is for that executive team to be modeling curiosity. So then the next question is, well, what does that look like? First off, it's creating an environment where people know they can ask questions without saying this might be a stupid question, or feeling like intimidated that they can't ask a question or they can't challenge an assumption. So I have to get their mindset around it, is that you want people questioning the way things are happening. And a way to begin to do that is you have to start with your own mindset to say, I know curiosity is good for us. I need to be willing to listen to other people's thoughts and opinions. But it's more than that. It's I have to create space, like on the agenda, that says, what questions do you have?
Yeah.
The other thing I encourage leaders to do is when somebody asks a question, the best thing you can say is, I don't know, but let's
Mhm.
explore. And what you're doing is you're modeling vulnerability, and that I want to explore it with you because your opinion matters to me.
So that all sounds sort of fairly straightforward. But as we know, with lots of stuff in organizations and management and people and everything else, what sounds straightforward isn't always. So what sort of what sort of tools can we give people, or how can we encourage this, and what sort of checks and balances do we have? I'm just thinking about like our children, and how, as you say, it's really good if you can allow them to be curious and stay with them when they're asking all the questions, but sometimes it just gets too much and we have to say stop just because. How do we sort of keep those moments open and keep moving forwards in organizations?
Yeah, so it is one about, first you have to enroll in the concept that curiosity drives performance, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the data today, Gallup released their engagement report. You work in engagement, and they had something like 68% disengagement, the highest disengagement they've ever seen. So you know something is happening in the workplace, right? And
Hmm.
my positioning is what's not working is people not being able to give their opinion. So what we did when we saw that engagement report, we pulled together a group of millennials, because millennials, at least in the US, represent 35% of the workplace, and they're the ones that are most disengaged. Now, why this is important is, well, you don't want anyone disengaged because productivity goes down, but more important than that, this is the age group that we would be developing to move into senior roles in the next decade. And they're signaling we're not interested. So we pulled them together, focus group, and said, what's the source of your disengagement? What's the source of your unhappiness? And they said, which was pretty profound, is my leader doesn't know me and doesn't care to know me. And so we said, wait, so like they don't know your personal life, that you have a dog or you like to run a marathon. They go, no, they don't know what I have to contribute to solving the problem. We have the most information and we're least consulted. And so we just now kind of phone it in. We just show up because we know we're just going to be told what to do and we're not making a contribution. Now, Joe, that can be remedied. There is an antidote to that, which is asking questions. And it
Uh-huh.
sounds, yeah, so straightforward, so easy. If that's the case, why are we not doing it? Because we have long forgotten. We have done a disservice to leaders when we have told them leadership has all the answers. The best leaders have all the answers. It's just not true. The best leaders have the best questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then what sort of happens? Because, we talk about employee voice. It's one of the four enablers of engagement that we talk about within the movement. And often we have organisations that are, for example, doing surveys. They're showing some curiosity there, but don't always then do anything with the information that they get. So how do you make sure that you do that? So you've asked the question, like, that's the first bit. What about the next bit?
Well, tell me more about that. What you mean, the first bit is you ask a question and then you're listening to the employee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so a lot of companies do employee surveys, but then don't necessarily do anything with the information that they've got. So you could argue
Hmm.
that they're being curious because they've asked questions, but then the answers disappear
No,
into the ether because they
no,
don't do anything with them.
they're not being curious. They're just saying, hey, we're supposed to do this survey every month, and we
Uh,
do it. They're not
yeah,
being curious. They're just being compliant. And compliant is nowhere related to curiosity. Now,
yeah,
here's the nuance of this is that we do want leaders to ask for feedback, whether that be one-on-one or in a survey. What you have to do is you have to close the loop. You have to
yeah,
say, you gave this feedback, we thank you for giving that feedback, and here's why we've gone in a different direction, but please keep giving your feedback. What you're saying is they're going out asking for stuff, but they don't close the loop and saying, why, what did we hear, what did we take action on, and what are we not going to take action on, and what's the rationale for doing that?
yeah.
See
Hmm.
the difference?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So what can we do with our leaders to help them to be more curious? Because again, it's not just as simple as getting people to be good at asking questions, as we've just said, because it isn't just the question, is it? It's the what follows from there sort of thing. So what sort of things can we do to develop our leaders in that and our teams?
Right. So the first thing is, curiosity can be measured. It's a behavior. And so we developed a curiosity curve assessment in which we can find out your current state of curiosity. Just like any diagnostic tool, the power of a tool like this is to be able to understand current state, and not just your current state, but the team's current state, the organizational state of that. And from there, we have a framework, which is I write about in my book, The Curiosity Curve, which takes people step by step in terms of how do you create a culture of curiosity. And the reason we're doing that is because it drives performance. So what I recommend is, let's take current state. You take the assessment, it takes about 6 minutes. And then we implement these frameworks. And then 6 months in a year, let's reassess and see have we moved the needle on curiosity. But more than that, have we moved performance? Have we moved engagement? Have we moved retention? And that's what matters.
Mhm. And do you think the people sort of at the other side, so the sort of employees more generally, would be able to sort of identify that feeling or that culture of curiosity, even if without you saying it, sort of thing? If you said to them, what does it feel like to work here? Do you think they would identify that, or perhaps?
I don't think they
No.
would use the language of novelty or curiosity. They might say, and you see this on Gallup's surveys, is my opinion matters. My voice matters. I feel valued. That's where it would show up and how we would translate into curiosity.
So one of the things that we like to share with our listeners is sort of what you could do on a Monday morning, although not in this case because it's well, it's today, isn't it? It's Easter Monday. But what from listening to this, what sort of steps can leaders take? What can they do to start to sort of put this into practice?
So first thing is Socrates said, know thyself. So when you wake up in the morning on next Monday, say to yourself, today is the day that I'm open minded. Today is the day that I ask questions so that it can better solve a problem, be more innovative. And so today I'm going to ask myself questions and I'm going to ask others questions. And when I'm listening, I'm going to be in that state, in that mode of shutting off judgment, shutting off biases. And that is where you start. Start with me, and then you expand it outward.
Lovely. Okay, so that's what they're going to do. And what will we see in 6 months' time, a year's time, if they continue working on this?
They will see um, higher engagement scores, they'll see higher retention scores, and they'll see higher job satisfaction. Those three variables drive performance. So they're going to
Mm-hmm.
see increased performance for the organization.
Mm-hmm. And how can we sort of monitor it? What sort of ongoing conversations can leaders have to sort of keep this going and keep this at sort of top of mind?
So the first thing I would do if I were taking over a new team is I would let them know I really value your opinion. I want you to feel seen and heard. And I would do this on an individual level. I would first ask, and at the individual level, is to say, how do you like to be led? When do you do your best work, right? So I'm getting a better understanding of how their brain works and how they do their best performance, because a leader's job is to get the best performance out of individuals and then out of teams. So I would begin to build that relationship. I would also then share with the team collectively that this is how I approach work and relationships. I love opinions. I love knowing that together we can make a better contribution. We're better together than at the individual level. And so I'm going to be asking for you to come to the table with your thoughts and opinions. And I'm going to often ask you, what do you need more of and what do you need less of from me as your leader? So it's up to the leader to set the tone of this is the expectation. And it's not just, you just can't say it. You actually have to behave your way into creating this culture of curiosity. Joe, this is not hard stuff, but our brain has become so certain and we think that that is the way of leadership that we have completely shut that off in organizations.
Yes, yeah, but that's with any of these things as well. It is that about that sort of becoming, isn't it? That sort of keeping it going and not just sort of thinking, oh, this sounds like a great concept, I'll do that next week, and then forgetting about it the following week because it isn't sort of top of mind and you've not sort of baked it into how you behave.
Yes, yes. And that's the power of doing a curiosity assessment. If
Mm-hmm.
the team takes it, on April 1st, and then in 6 months, they take it again, you can say, where have we improved and where do we need to get better? And the curiosity isn't just one score. There are four factors that make it up. So it is a complete analysis of what you would need or the team would need to really drive performance.
Yes, yeah. Lovely. Any final words for the audience? Maybe your top tip?
So if you really want to go deeper in understanding curiosity, I highly recommend that you take a look at my book. It's called The Curiosity Curve by Debra Clary. But overall, my one tip would be is to start with self and begin to
Yeah.
think about how can I be more curious.
Lovely. Thank you, Deborah. Thanks for your time today.
You're welcome.
And just to let you know, next week Andy Gorham's back and he's talking to Tom Kedode, who is that's wrong. I can see that the wrong way around. Tom Kegode, who's from Sparkshift.
Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.